Welcome to another edition of Maverick University. I'm your host, David Hallberg. Joining us today is Brother Caleb Rardin, a layman at Northwest Bible Baptist Church and a graduate of Providence Baptist College. And we're happy to have you again with us today.
Thank you.
Last time we talked a little bit about the concept of going to 4 years of Bible college when you weren't necessarily called to preach, and how, regardless, it wasn't a waste of time. It was a benefit to you and helped you with what you're doing today. Mm-hmm. And I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing today now.
Okay.
You're not in full-time ministry, but you are in ministry. You
Right.
are an integral part of the ministry of Northwest Bible Baptist Church. You're part of the music ministry. We sing together in a men's quartet. I've been doing that for I don't even know how many years now.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah, probably.
Has to be something like that.
And but one of the other things that has you really involved is as a Sunday school teacher in our church. And you've got this particular niche age that is pretty awesome to be involved in, and also a great responsibility as well. It's the young singles. We're talking about single adults that have just graduated high school all the way up to about age 29.
Yes.
And I want you to tell us a little bit about why that is such an important age group and why it's such a big responsibility.
Yeah, I think it is a big responsibility, and it's an age group that sometimes, I won't say the word forgotten, because I don't think they're forgotten, but sometimes they kind of fit in a weird spot, right? You've got so many ministries in your church designed for teenagers, right?
Sure.
You've got your youth group, you've got camps, you've got conferences, you've got all these kinds of things that it's designed around teenagers. And then you've got, obviously, naturally married adults. They're kind of the lifeblood of the church, right? They've got the kids in the church or the Christian school or what have you.
And they're involved because their kids are in those ministries you mentioned
Exactly.
before.
Right.
So you've got this weird in-between, I'm not a kid anymore,
Right.
and I'm not married and I don't even have my own kids
Right.
situation.
Yeah, it's almost this little island, right? But there's a lot of important decisions, and this is something I talk about in my class. I mean, almost every week, my class would tell you. Some of the most important decisions of your life are made between the ages of 18 and 29, right? We always talk about how teenagers, your character is made in your teenage years, and I believe that's true, and I see that in young adults. But the opportunity to make decisions based upon those character traits that you built, those decisions are actually made 18 to 29, right? You don't make a lot of those pivotal life-changing decisions as a teenager. You make them in this age group. And, sometimes there can be a lack of direction, right? I've talked about this in our previous podcast, talked about having a plan, right? There can be a lack of a plan in life, unfortunately. There's a lot of things that I try to talk with my class about on Sundays and in activities, and just in one-on-one interactions, which is a huge part of my, if you want to call it my ministry in that area. A lot of the interaction I make is not in the classroom on Sunday morning. It's that week-to-week, day-to-day, texting, calling, sitting, having lunch or dinner with these guys, and my wife with the ladies. That's a huge part of it, because that's such a pivotal age.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. While I teach a young married couples class, the interaction I think is more crucial for you to be with them on a day-to-day basis rather than once a week, because my couples, if they don't have any interaction, they have each other,
Right.
And they're busy with their little marriage, their little home,
Yeah.
they're maybe having their first child or whatever it might be. So if they don't get a text from me, in a particular week, it's not going to ruin them. But it can, if you're a young single person, it can really make your day when your Sunday school teacher interacts with you and is involved in your daily life.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Some of them, sometimes they might feel isolated, right? Because maybe, not, once again, they have no actual relationship with their old youth pastor, right? They're supposed to be beyond that, right? So that youth pastor role is gone, and I'm not saying I'm the youth pastor of the adult singles by any means, but they still have that desire for one-on-one interaction and one-on-one, sometimes counseling, or just asking them, hey man, what's your plan for your job? How's your job going? What do you do for work? What do you enjoy about your job? Little things like that can help them to solidify who they are, right? They're deciding at the end of the day, they're deciding who they're going to be. What's my relationship with church going to be? What's my relationship with God going to be? What's my relationship with other Christians going to be? It's a super pivotal time. And so while they don't have a youth pastor, having someone that they can bounce those ideas or struggles off of, I think can be really helpful.
I don't know if I was just really advanced on this thought, but as someone who's single, 18, I think they need to make that decision of where am I going to be in 10 years?
Right.
Here I am, 18, just graduated high school. Where am I going to be in 10 years?
Right.
When I'm 28, where will I be? Will I be married? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Yeah.
But will I be in church?
Right.
If I am married, is my wife going to be a Christian?
Yeah.
Is she going to have no problem coming to church with me every single Sunday, Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, like I've been raised?
Right.
Are we going to have kids? Are our kids going to be in a Christian home? What? And all of that is determined by some kind of conscious decision. They've grown up, they've developed that character like you talked about as a teenager, but now it's time to act on everything you've been taught.
Yeah.
And as a 15-year-old, that's kind of when I made that decision.
Gotcha.
I had gotten in trouble in school.
Yeah.
I had that, come to Jesus moment where you're like, okay, I was saved, but it was, what do I see myself doing in 10 years? And,
Right.
I saw myself at 25 in the future. I'm like, well, a 25-year-old me is going to be a college graduate, probably married with kids. Wow. Am I going to be in church? Is my family going to be in church? And it all came to pass. At age 25, I was married, had kids, and, I had a career, and that was all.
That's not by accident.
Yeah, it was purposeful, it was goal-oriented. So if you could you talk a little bit about some of the topics? I mean, obviously when you're a Sunday school teacher, you're given a pack of lessons, and you're going maybe chapter by chapter through a particular book of the Bible. Do you let that drive your topics, or do you try to insert some key topics as you teach to this little niche group?
Yeah, I think the Bible does a good job of inserting its own topics. It really does. If you let it, and if you are looking in specific books of the Bible, it's awesome, right? I'll tell you, we've gone through a lot of the Pauline epistles, and real world, young adult topics are addressed all throughout it. I mean, we don't even have to start talking about the books of Timothy, but that's an excellent place to start. Right? But I think that my lessons do have that. I always look at my lesson from the perspective that they are in, right? You made a really good point about, looking 10 years down the road. I think sometimes, and I talk about this in my class, sometimes we look at, for a single adult, we look at marriage as the next thing. Right? That's the next event before I can do anything, is I have to get married. And while that should be important, that should be a focus, you can do other things in the meantime. You can be serving in a ministry. You can have a good handle on your finances. You can be tithing. You can be giving to missions. You can be giving to other programs in your church. You should be involved in your ministry. You should be orienting yourself in such a way that you're somebody worth dating, right? Or worth being married to.
Yeah.
Often we're looking for this person that's worthy of being married, but we're not ready ourselves, right? And so if you're looking to marry a good Christian girl, I talk to guys, you're looking to marry a good Christian, are you a good Christian guy, right? Are you ready to if that girl comes along, would they even be interested in you with what you do in your church and your service to your church and how you have a handle on your finances, things like that. So I talk a lot about those topics, and I'm coming at it from a male perspective, but I think there's female perspective that can be had there too. My wife does a really good job with that and talking with our ladies. But a lot of those topics are done, through the lesson, right, and through the teaching. But a lot of those topics are talked about outside of the teaching, just in the preliminaries of our class. We talk through praises. We go through prayer requests, understanding that God's real, right? And He wants to work in our life. And sometimes, especially with a single adult, it's easy, and especially if you're isolated and you work all week and you come to church and you see these married couples that are maybe your same age. It can be discouraging, right? And understanding that God still wants to work in your life, right? Maybe your plan isn't going exactly how you think it should go, but understanding that God's still working in your life, He can still have you see souls saved. He can still see you have visitors to church. He can still see you working in a ministry and growing and helping others grow. I think that kind of talk, even before you get into your lesson, super important. And trying to be a good example of that. I'm not the perfect example of that by any means, but I try to be an example that the ministry is fun, right? Yeah. And not full-time ministry. I'm not in full-time, but being in the ministry is fun, and serving God is fun, and church is a fun thing, and studying God's Word is a fun thing. And I'm not trying to make it something that it's not, right? It's not rah-rah teenager, camp and youth conference stuff, but it can be real to you. And I think it's honestly, it starts before you even open the Bible for your lesson. It can.
I like that, because it doesn't have to be, you're teaching even in the preliminaries. You're teaching not just when you say open your Bible. That's not when the lesson starts. The lesson started before even Sunday school started, when they're walking in the door, when you're talking with them in your conversation. I like what you were talking about as well, where they can see themselves as, as contributing to doing something, not waiting for some monumental, marriage moment or whatever, or whatever that thing is, whatever they're waiting for. Yeah, this job.
Or once I graduate from the secular college I'm going to.
Being what I need to be today, and not giving any excuses for why I'm not.
Right.
I think a lot of singles can look at, the married couples in their church and say, yeah, when I'm that, then I'll be what I need to be. But they need to understand that what they are is, they're the future backbone of our church. No, I shouldn't even say future backbone. They are the backbone of our church.
Yep.
Right now, they can be, the motivator, the bringing visitors to church.
Right.
Your class is unique because we have a Bible college here. Half your class are legit enrolled Bible college students.
Right.
The other half is not.
Yes.
And I think the ones that are not sometimes can look at the Bible college students and like, oh yeah, they're the ones that are supposed to bring the visitors.
Right.
No,
not
absolutely not. In fact, those people are going away. When they graduate Bible college, they will be gone. And guess who will still be here?
Right.
You. And if anybody needs to be bringing the visitors, it's the people that are staying, at the very least.
Yeah, it's taking responsibility and taking ownership for your church.
Yeah.
Right? This is my church. This is the place that I go to Sunday school. This is the place where I serve. I'm going to invite people to come. I'm going to be involved in the ministry. I'm going to have that responsibility. And that, honestly, in single adults, that can be something that can be a struggle, is responsibility. You have to actively seek out responsibility, right? Because if you don't, I think the tendency is to fill your time with things that really aren't worth it. And I'm speaking specifically about young men, but with young men, you can fill your time with things that are just not going to add any value to your life. They're not going to add any value to God's will for your life, for sure, or God's ministry. It's not all bad things, right? Whether it's sports or video games or whatever the pursuit is, I think for young adults, I think the struggle can be finding that responsibility. When you're a married man, you assume that responsibility, right? When she walks down the aisle, you have that responsibility. You don't have a choice, okay? But if you're a young single man, you have to determine that I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to be disciplined.
You have to be proactive in seeking the responsibility.
Right. For myself.
It's not going to come knocking on your door.
Right.
The only thing that comes knocking on your door is time wasters, video games, or whatever.
Oh yeah.
You're doing.
And it does, and so that responsibility, that ownership, is something I talk about. And like you said, it's intimidating, right? Because I've got Bible college students that are studying the Bible all week that are in there, and it can be intimidating for my non-Bible college students, but I don't think any less of them. Just as I remember going back to visit my home church when I was a Bible college student and seeing guys that maybe didn't go to Bible college or guys that were just working in the church. As a Bible college student, I didn't think any less of them, but I would hope that they would never think less of themselves.
Sure.
Right? And so that's what I want to make sure that my young adults understand is don't sell yourself short, right? Have responsibility, have a desire, have a plan, take ownership.
If only they knew our Bible college students as well as I know them. they wouldn't be intimidated
I know
at all.
myself in Bible college, right? No way.
So let's talk a little bit about the topics. You talk about money issues.
Yes.
What are some of the advice that you give
So that's a personal desire of mine, a personal interest to me because I work in financial industry, right? Okay. So I have a personal kind of vested interest in it. My class will laugh because it kind of finds its way into, each topic because I think it's an important thing, right? I think it's a sign of character, being able to take care of your money. And unfortunately, I've seen over the few years that I've been doing this, I've seen so many young men get themselves in such a bind financially because they just don't know how to manage their money. Yeah. And being a steward of what God's given us is just as important as other things, but sometimes I think we just don't put the focus on it that we need. So taking care of your money, understanding, what it takes to be a married man. I'm sure once you're married, that financial burden there, that responsibility, you can't just go out and spend money on whatever you want, right? You have to have that locked down. So helping them with that is an important thing.
You talk about career goals with them. I mean, what are some of the things that you talk to them about and advice you give them?
I think God's blessed me with the unique opportunity because I'm not in the ministry full time. I know exactly where they're coming from. Even though I chose to go to Bible college for 4 years, I still went to a secular college for 4 years, right? And I think God and our church needs laymen, not just laymen that just show up for church, but laymen that work hard, right? And that work hard in their job and tithe and give to the missions and raise a family and are just good, hard-working men. And so having a career, I push them not to have a job, to have a career, right? And I've got guys that come out of high school and they have a good job, right? And maybe that's a job that they want to grow into a career. There are some guys that have that. Some of them, it's a job that probably doesn't have much in ways of career aspirations. I always push them to aim at the highest, the best possible version of what they're interested in, right?
I like what you said. You're trying to aim them not for a job, but toward a career. And so many, when you graduate high school, you have to settle for a job.
Right.
It's your first real work experience outside of high school. But eventually you need to get to the point of, okay, where is this taking me?
Yeah. And your advice about looking 10 years in the future, you said it's kind of trite. But I think it's very valuable, and it's something that shouldn't be discounted, right? Look at yourself 5, 10 years, and say, what will I have learned from the job I'm in that maybe I could take somewhere else, right? What are those skills that I'll learn? How could I better myself? How could I push myself in some way to improve myself day over day, right? It's a daily thing. So not just settling for a paycheck. Yeah. Right? If you're going to be, for me personally, my thought was always, hey, if I'm going to be a layman in the church, I'm going to work a secular job, I'm going to work that job as best I can. I'm going to be a good example of what a Christian is at the job site, and I'm going to work as hard as I can and try to be the best at it. Right? So having that desire and that motivation to do that, sometimes I have to try to instill in young adults. And usually the best way to do that is just asking questions. Yeah. What interests you? What are you interested in? What do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? And that gets their wheels turning sometimes. They start to think about, oh, you know what? I really like this specific thing. Maybe this field is something that I would be better suited for. And it's been interesting to see now, having stuck around for a little bit, seeing some of those men make those kind of interesting decisions and career decisions, and some of them now are married men that are doing pretty good. And it's just a blessing to see.
Well, I hope this is a blessing to those that maybe are teaching a class like yours or dealing with these young couples in a church setting, and a young couples class, or not a young couples, but a young singles class, can definitely be more than a real life version of Christian Mingle. It's actually character building and biblical instruction.
Yeah, and it's fun too. It's fun too. We have so much fun in that class. Activities are great. We have lots of fun activities that we try to get people to talk to each other and enjoy, Christian camaraderie, because they need it. Yeah. There's enough pressure out there in the world. They need Christian interaction.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Yeah. And if you want to check out our other episodes, check out our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Also check out our audio-only platforms as well. Thanks so much for joining us.